Hey, welcome back, Mustangs. We are here at Laker Nation, and today we are going to talk about basically how do you grade elementary art? Well, grading elementary art can be a challenge, especially when you look at how Peggy Davison Jenkins talks about we should be thinking about grading our children and what we should be looking for. She has a really good chapter on it. She discusses it and talks about it. And I think it's important that you take note of it. So this is the book that we've been using, Peggy Davison Jenkins. There's chapter 4 is methods. Chapter 5 is, how children develop. But chapter 7 is evaluation. And so this is something that we want to spend time with. Again, it talks about praise. It talks about comments on comments. It talks about building on strengths. Talking about art as a reflection, and self-evaluation is another key component. I think that another thing that's really valuable is displaying children's art. But the thing that you have to remember now is that some art projects should be displayed, some shouldn't be displayed. So because they are process and we're thinking process over product. So earlier, we did a project where we worked with Sculpey and clay. And this is an example of the horse that I talked about that was a pinch pot horse. Now, some things to talk about when we look at this. I want you to think about that horse. And if we look at a rubric like this is how I grade in a sense. We go with a value scale of 4. 1 means there was hardly any attempt. They need lots of extra time. 2 means that, hey, they've done the project. It has been completed to a certain level of, and the key word here is mastery. So 2 means that they've completed the project, but it's not really mastery. 3 is supposed to mean that, yes, they have mastered this project. 4 means, wow, they did an exceptional job and they can do this over and over. Now, the hard part I have with giving students a 2 and a 3 in when you only have them once a week, or you only do art once a week with them is when do they get the time to really develop those skills of mastery? So what I really look for is, does it have a pinch pot? So when I look at this, and this is a child that's made this, yes, it does have a pinch pot. 2, does it have ball shapes? Why did that stop? I'm still going. Oh, my screen just changed and I was just totally confused. I apologize. So, does it have ball shapes? Yep. I can see a ball shape here. There was originally a ball shape that was used and we cut that ball shape open for the mouth. So, yep. Does it have a coil shape? It has 2 coil shapes that were flattened into pancakes. So there's the ear. There's the ears were pancake or flattened coil shapes. Also, we made a large coil shape that we flattened and made the mane of the horse. So yes. And then lastly, is it assembled? Did the child put it together? And here's the big factor. It doesn't have to necessarily overtly look like a horse, because you could argue with me that this doesn't look like a horse. But the key is at their understanding what their level of ability is, understanding what their level of mastery is, you have to pay attention to those facts. I can say without a doubt that this is a very well done project. This project was exceptional. Now, if I look at the one that that I was just demonstrating, the Keith Haring painting project, and we're talking about drawing bubble letters and stick figures, one of the things that we can discover is that as the kids are learning this new skill of drawing this and creating static or dynamic images, one of the things you're going to discover is they have to copy and understand how to make it. So the first time that they make these figures, they're going to be bizarre. They're going to be rather unusual. It's not necessarily that they've developed mastery, but that they're starting to get the concept. So a lot of times what I end up doing in an art class is I grade the student on, are they starting to get the concept? Were they willing to do the concept? And were they willing to create with the parameters of the assignment? The assignment was we were going to draw stick figures. We drew each joint with a circle. They have to understand that those joints are represented by those circles, and the lines are the bones thereafter. And then we draw a line around the outside. Now, sometimes that's where their understanding falls apart and you get some odd shapes. Sometimes it's understanding how a person is structured. Sometimes it's the first time the student has ever looked at a person from how to draw it like this. So, I have a tendency to grade the students more on how well did their process go than opposed to how well their finished product is. Now, the real question is, I said to do complements, so they had to use orange and blue. Then they have to use yellow and, yellow and green, or yellow and violet, and red and green. So now here's one. So watch what I'm doing right now. Did I erase out the inside? No, I didn't. So now this is something that you could grade a child on, as if you wanted to be a stickler for grading a child on an art project. This is something that you could say that you didn't get full points because you did not do a step in there. But at the same time, sometimes happy accidents occur because we miss steps. Sometimes people forget to add certain things to a recipe and they like it better because they forgot to add those things to the recipe. Art can be that way. So again, art is very general in the sense that you can have a lot of options available to you on how you grade this. But I really think you should take in mind that if the child is completing the project, it's following the parameters, they've tried to master it to your level of understanding, to their level of understanding, then I think they're successful. So I'm not saying that this is a fuzzy wuzzy world and you give everybody an A, but the thing you have to think about is what one child's, if you have a child that's really good at art to begin with, and they can draw whatever they want to draw already, and they give you something that isn't great, how do you give them, even though their isn't great is way better than the child that doesn't draw well? How do you give them an A over the person that doesn't draw well, but boy, they gave you a great effort? So those are questions that you have to ask yourself. So a lot of times I base my grade solely on process over product, looking at the child and seeing how well they do, seeing how well they make things and seeing how well they've adapted and attempted to make those things. So yes, grading in art is a real challenge because it's very subjective, and it also affects students in lots of ways. So many of you who are elementary art teachers fear art for the fact that at some point somebody told you that your work didn't look like what it was supposed to look like. And you repeatedly got to hear that and were given no skills to make it better. So when that happened, you started to think, well, I can't draw or I can't make art. Even though I know that all of you are very good at creating, you just don't understand the process of making something to look like what it really should look like. Now, as a person like me, I fortunately developed those skills without having to have much instruction, where other people have to have some instruction. I was able to get on a bike and probably in my second try was riding it, where some people, you spend a lot of time with training wheels, you spend a long time trying to teach those skills. So math problems, boy, I could work them 1,000 times and I might not do well on the test because I have some developmental issues with math. It's not that I'm bad at math, I'll probably say I am, but I'm not bad at math. I finished calculus and high level calculus in college, and I did things of that nature, but I had to really work at it. So some people really have to work at art, but again, it's one of those things. How do you grade them? How do you tell them something that comes from within that they're bad? So again, think about how you do this. Think about your projects that you choose. If you choose projects that are more process based and about understanding concepts rather than having it look like the happy little pumpkin at Halloween or the happy little Santa Claus, if there's mistakes made, if there's things where you don't allow them to have creativity and coming to their conclusion in the work, then that's when you start to get the child and you slow the child's development down because they start to think that there's only one way to do it. Where the one thing I've talked about, and I talk about mistakes a lot, is that mistakes are what make us better artists. We get better by making those mistakes. So to grade somebody based on some mistakes they've made on a project that has to look a certain way, I think is the real challenge. So you need to think about how you approach this with the idea that you're allowing the students to grow and to develop mastery. That's the real key. How do you let the children develop mastery? Hey, good job. Talk to you later.